Good morning, it's Jonathan Barrett with this week's Market Buzz. And look what's happened in the States. Very interesting. Donald Trump's tariffs have been deemed illegal. The decision goes to the Supreme Court probably around, we'll get an answer around around the 14th of October is when it goes there. So there'll be a lot of volatility around whether it's illegal or whether it's legal. There was a prior recording on that says that it wasn't. But anyway, let's see what happens. A little bit more on that a little bit later. The PCE inflation gauge in the States rose 2.9% year on year, a little bit higher than expected. And I think if anything there, we know that we're going to get a bit of an interest rate movement coming up for September. Whether or not that's the last one for the year, that's my guess, but let's see what happens. Okay, silver climbed to a new 14-year high, mainly on industrial demand out of China. This week we've had a little special in terms of rare earths. So speaking of metals, we're looking at some of the rare earths around some of the stocks, which you should get exposure to over time. In China, though, manufacturing did shrink for the fifth month in a row on tariff confusion. Hello, that's going to continue for some time to come. And the NBS manufacturing PMI climbed less than expected at 49.4, obviously below 50. It's a contracting economy and not a growing economy. And in Australia, the S&P Global Manufacturing PMI today actually climbed to 51.3%, from 51.3 to 53. And that's a bullish read and quite expansionary, which is not a bad thing at all when you come to the local markets. Particularly, when we're seeing a lot of support coming from the monetary side of things with the RBA moving on rates last 2 weeks ago. Okay, let's now have a little bit more of a deeper dive into what's actually happening there in the States concerning Trump's tariffs. We do know the tariffs are negative for the economy over time. Contrary to what's actually happening in the market's liking it. They are seeing growth back into the US. They're seeing valuations in some stocks better as a result of those tariffs. So I think the Americans are buying more US, and that seems to be quite positive at the moment. But I think when you look at the ruling that's come out, it's the federal court basically has turned around and said, when you look at it, 7-4 ruling actually declared that President Trump's tariffs are illegal. Now, that opens the debate of US trade policy, whether or not it's correct, or whether or not it's a good thing. I think when you look at it, we've still got a fair way to go in terms of that decision. Obviously, Trump is pretty much upset. And on the back of that, obviously a major concern. You would have expected that he would have done his homework prior to that. But anyway, interestingly, in this week's report, we've got a chart, exports versus imports, and you can see the big change there, the massive change in what's actually happening there. Now, when you look at it, the rebuff which we're seeing from the Fed is basically on the 2nd of April tariffs introduced by Tariff on Liberation Day, and that established a 10% baseline. And when you look at it, that's the argument which they're looking at, saying that he didn't have the power to do it, there wasn't an emergency, and as a result of that, it's been challenged. Now, the court are describing the tariffs unbounded in scope, amount, and duration, and they concluded that it wasn't part of the reliance on the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which is why Trump actually put that. Now, Trump sees that as an emergency, other people don't, and I think that's the main question that we're actually looking at. Now, it doesn't mean that the tariffs are voided yet. There's still some time. 14th of October is when the Supreme Court meet, and obviously there'll be a bit of arguments to and fro. I think when you look at it, and regardless, hopefully we'll get settlement, but it's going to create a lot of volatility in the markets, and that to me is pretty much my major concern. But there's also a flip side to this, that if it's ruled void, then the Fed has to pay back the tariffs which it's collected, and that's close to $159 billion. And some people are saying, well, that's going to trip Treasury. So then I think you'd see Trump would be invoking his emergency powers if that was the case. But I think there's a lot of water needs to pass under this bridge. And I don't think we're going to get something out very, very soon. But what I do think, it might create uncertainty in the markets, and then we might get some more volatility to the downside. Let's see what happens. Obviously, early days. Let's see what happens when New York opens tonight. because this happened over the weekend. So I guess here it's sort of, when we look at it, Trump has imposed them. There's still a lot to be done, but if there casts any shadow of doubt, then really the gains we're seeing should be eroded quite quickly. So let's see exactly what happens over the next couple of trading sessions to see how people actually feel, or see how the people feel about the decisions that we made in the Supreme Court. So quite a challenge. Okay, so lots happening on that front. I guess let's just stay tuned to that. I guess this week, in terms of economic numbers, it's a shortened US trade week. We got August jobs numbers, and I think we're going to see whether or not that's going to continue to show a sharp slowdown, as we've seen in previous releases. That'll sort of get the fact that we will get that rate cut. I think the concern there is non-payrolls and unemployment. That's going to show the economy is still quite weak. If that's the case, then they'll get the cut. I think trading labour to inflation, I think, is the key now. And I actually think that given the inflation numbers remain quite high, we'll see that cut. But whether or not we get another one this year is another feeling. Not quite sure. I actually feel that we won't get another one. But obviously we'll see what the data says. So I think if you think about it, we're just coming into September, we'll get that rate cut in the States, but I don't think it'll follow through. I don't think we'll get another one. Okay, too many issues there and too many unseens, particularly on what this inflation, what the tariffs are doing to inflation. So in my mind, a bit of an issue there. Okay, outside that, next week, we've obviously got a fair bit of data, short wheat. We've also got labour data in Canada and key inflation data in Europe. So that's going to be something to keep an eye out for. Okay, well, let's move on from there. Obviously a lot happening in the market. Let's have a look at some of our positions and sort of to provide some commentary. We'll just gold, as we know, we've been long for some time. We've really enjoyed this move. I do like the fact that this is the breach we've seen, and we've now just breached that area. You can see there's a good consolidation there, and I think if anything there, this area here, you can see good trend lines, good breach now, and then really should try and test those highs. So we do think gold will test the new high, maybe go higher from here, test the historic highs, and go significantly higher. This is a good breach and pullback move. It's a breach, pullback, and then higher. Normally it follows the same length as it would, so that'll see gold pretty much through the 3,500 and 3,540 level. Let's have a look at silver. The silver is a trade which we've been long for some time, going quite well, and as you can see, it's following that trend nicely. You can see that it's just broken up through the top. This is a very good move, really like it. New highs, new record highs, 14 highs, 14-year highs as we mentioned. So I think if anything there, onwards and upwards she goes. Excuse me, I do actually think that 50 is something where it needs to be tested. So we've still got $10 on that. So I'm looking forward to higher prices for silver as well. And as mentioned, I did a technical piece and a fundamental piece on rare earths. There's some good stocks in Australia that I think it's worthwhile having something in your portfolio. I have outlined a bullish case for rare earths, and I think and I will work through that just a little bit later. Okay, now let's have a look at the equities. All right, on the Dow, there you are, right on the high, just spending some time there consolidating. I really don't, we've got some divergence starting to appear here, which does worry me. And that divergence says that we're shaping up for a bit of a fall, just so you can see it. Here's the high here, and as you can see, there's a low there. So that indicates a good piece of divergence there, which would indicate that markets should come under a little bit of pressure. Let's see what happens there. Okay, and as you can see, the same picture in the S&P, a little bit of divergence starting to feel there. Probably like to see it come back to that 6,200 level, but let's see. Okay, that's our local market now. Right on these highs, it's just come off today. I've no real reason why it should be up here. It should consolidate back. That's what we're looking for. So I'd anticipate a little bit of consolidation, and maybe see it actually come back to the 8,600 level. Over the next couple of trading sessions. So let's see what happens on that front. Okay, let's have a look at, we've mentioned silver, we mentioned gold. Let's have a look at oil. And as you can see, oil now is just bumping around here. I do actually feel that it'll trade back to the top end again. 65.70 is very good support. I like that to hold. I'd like it to test back to that 77.70. I do feel it's in a range, and whilst it's in a range, it's quite comfortable. Importers and exporters get used to this range, so I don't see too much adversity happening there. But I do think it'll test the top end of the range, and if anything, it'll be more of a supply issue that will cause it. Okay, righty ho. Now let's I'll just move out of that, and I want to talk a little bit about rare earths. All these long names which we don't really understand what they are, but what we do know is they're always in demand. It's been an area, a sector that I've been quite interested in. It's the demand for rare earths, I think, will continue. And it's really underpinned by a couple of main factors, drivers, which won't go away. That's why I think moving into the rare earths elements area for a long-term hold is something I think which will drive significant gains. So I'm actually looking at that, and have been. We have invested already in companies that produce these rare earths, and these are rare earths like neodymium, praseodymium, dipsoporium, if I've named those correctly. These sorts of minerals, they're critical components in EV motors, wind turbines and robotics. So I think when you see growth in that area occurring, you've got to see growth in demand. And when you look at EV sales, where they're projected to go more than 20% annually through to 2030, and offshore wind capacity expected to double, I think you'll find that the rare earth intensity is a sector that will remain significantly higher than any conventional alternatives for investing. So I do think that having a look at these and putting some of those in control into your portfolio is worthwhile. Remember also, China currently controls around 70% of rare earth production and 85% of processing capacity. And I think that to me is something that is highlighted in a lot of the Western governments. So I think if you get any disruption there, you'll see prices a lot higher. So with that, I actually like looking at the rare earth market. Stocks like Lynas, Afura, Northern Minerals, and Iluka are stocks that I really think that is worthwhile. So I think what you can do is actually, on the back foot of those stocks, just look to purchase. I do like Northern Minerals over a lot of them, so I would actually like to think it's a lower priced stock. It's only trading around 3 or 4 cents. It's what we would say more of a penny type of stock. But I think given the outlook, I actually feel that this Northern Minerals is something that you could look at to put in your portfolio. It's not a lot of outlay, but at the end of the day, I feel that that's good for solid growth. Whether it's the processing side, which they're looking at, I think that it's certainly needed, particularly focused in Australia, away from China. So it's a good story. Okay, well, that's about it from me for this week. I hope everyone has a great week's trading. It's going to be nice and volatile. So let's hope we're just on the right side of the market. So it's bye for me for this week, and happy trading. Bye for now.